Alright folks, let's get the show on the road. I'm gonna look a little bit at the various gun vices. This is somewhat of an early look. I'm not done looking at them yet, I need to do more shooting, but now at this stage I have a little bit of hands-on time with all of them. So this is sort of a first look, early impressions, and a feature overview, if you wish, of the gun vices in question. So what I have here are the Reaper grip from Kopf Jager Industries, whatever they're called. Kopf means head in German, Jager means hunter, I guess that means head hunter, I don't know. It's odd for an American company to have a German name. Although I vaguely remember, wasn't there a Nazi division that was Kopfjäger? Was it Dummkopf? Don't remember. Doesn't matter. It was interesting. It's an interesting design, looks a little different. This guy is the Vice from RRS, Really Right Stuff. And these three are the different versions of the gun pods from Field Research Optics. So this one is the one I own. I mean, I bought it a year and a half ago from them. And these two are the newer models. So this guy is basically a replacement for the model I have. And this is a new different design called the Flex Light. I also reached out to Hog Saddle and to Triclops, but I did not hear anything back. The only people who responded to me were the Field Optics guys, who sent me these two to play with, and the guys from Really Right Stuff. The Reaper grip came from a friend of mine who happened to own one, so he loaned it to me for a couple of weeks to play with. So I'm gonna wrap up with it shortly and get it out of here. I'm sure he wants his rifle vice back. So I'll start out by weighing all of them and going over the features of each one as we go along, so you'll have an idea of which is which. Let's clear some space. I have my scales that not super well calibrated, but since I'm comparing stuff side by side, you'll at least get an idea of what's what. Starting with the Reaper grip, it's 1 pound 16 ounces, so 22.2 ounces. This particular model, it's about $160. It comes with this thing they call the direct mount adapter. It hooks up to these 4 screw holes here, so you can put it here or here. On this side you can also just directly mount a tripod adapter plate. This particular adapter that they ship with the Reaper grip is cut out of spec, so the clamp is undersized, and the guy who uses it has to use an additional tripod clamp with it to use, I think he uses a Really Right Stuff a tripod for it to work. I tried it in a bunch of different Arca Swiss clamps that I have, and I found one in which I can clamp it down. This is a Field Optics ULP, but in most I can't. So this is clearly undersized. Okay, but shit happens. Okay. The original gun pod that I have, this is pretty heavy. Oh, excuse me. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but I just wanted to kind of show a weight comparison. It weighs exactly the same as the Reaper grip, and these two are the heaviest of the bunch. The Really Right Stuff. This is another clamp here that you can get it either with the Arca Swiss adapter or with just a flat plate. All the Field Optics Research stuff has a machined Arca Swiss adapter, so this is a little bit lighter at about 19.7 ounces. The new gun pod, so the replacement to the one I have, it is a little bit lighter, 1 pound and 1 ounces, and making it lighter was one of the things they were looking to do. And the new Flex Light, I'll talk more about why it's called that later, is 13 ounces. So this is easily the lightest one of the bunch. Okay. If you look at the different features, it's clear that different companies utilize different approaches for doing this stuff. Before I get into features, so prices. The really right stuff, the Vise, is about $300 or $330, $340 with the adapter. The gun pod, this gun pod, it's called FM570. That's the newest. This sucker is about $300. This one has a threaded hole and an integrated Arca Swiss adapter, so you don't need to buy any extra adapters if you have an Arca Swiss tripod. And the Flex Light, I think, is about $210. Same business. You have an integrated Arca Swiss attachment. As far as the features go, the really right stuff Vise, comparatively speaking, is the least feature-rich option. But what it is really, really well executed. It's an interesting design. They were not going for any sort of crazy features. They were basically trying to make a simple, robust, and really, really polished gun vise. And that's exactly what this is. The knob adjustment is stupid smooth. They're using this interesting, I don't know if you guys can see, I think you can. They're using this interesting arrangement where there is a threaded shank. Inside another threaded shank, there is very long engagement surface, and what it allows them to do is to have a comparatively coarse thread while still having the action being super smooth. It is exceptional. So it's like a Swiss watch. It's really cool. The jaws are simple jaws with rubberized inserts on the inside, so you don't scratch anything up. And notice that they are at the camera angle. This is going to be easier to see. Yeah, this is better. And notice that they are sloped in a little bit, so whatever they grasp is going to be held quite a little bit better and even pushed down as you are clamping down on it. For a lot of different stocks, it doesn't matter too much, but I have a couple of ARs with what is essentially a tubular forend, and it really made a difference there. So it makes for a very, very secure grip. Okay. The gun pod from Field Optics Research uses clearly a different approach. They're not trying to conceal the guidelines or anything like that. Here, the guides are integrated, cut into the jaws. Here they are basically large pins. They are not trying to conceal anything, but they are going for a lot of features. And most of these features are actually quite useful. For starters, what I mentioned before, the integrated Arca Swiss adapter is kind of nice. You don't need to buy anything else. And also it keeps the whole thing low. I'll talk about that in a moment. In the center of it, there is an insert. So if you took out the insert, this holds a Picatinny rail on the bottom. So you have that. Okay. Tighten that back down. And another thing, if you notice, so the way they did the jaws of the vise, one side is rubberized, and the spacing of this rubber indentations matches a Picatinny rail. So if you have a gun with a Picatinny rail on the side, this will actually match it. The jaw, generally on the outside, is machined, this is just machined aluminum, to match the Picatinny rail. So if you happen to have like a quad rail handguard or whatever else, which still used, I think, a good bit in law enforcement, you can take these halves and invert them in, and that's what I did with this side, right? This is here metal is in, and if you invert the metal sides and lock into two Picatinny rails, this thing is not going anywhere. It's a super sturdy attachment. I don't have any quad rail handguards anymore, so I took a conventional M-lock handguard, put two M-lock rails on the side, and tried it. It's really, really sturdy. Don't know if it's necessary. It's necessary, but it's there already. I don't see any sort of a real problem with it. Reversing this thing is pretty straightforward. There is a plug here. You pull it out, open it up, pull the jaw off, rotate it, and you're good to go. Okay. The original gun pod that I have is basically the same thing. It's just a little bit longer and a little bit beefier. With the new gun pod, they just made it shorter, took out some metal. In terms of functionality, there is not really a big difference, but there is a notable difference in weight. I think it's what, about 5 or 6 ounces lighter for this guy, and they both work fine. Okay. The flex light is the design that I have not seen before, so this was very interesting. So what they did here, it's not as feature-rich as a conventional gun pod, but well, it is lighter. It still has the integrated Arca Swiss. It still has a threaded hole for the tripod, if you are so inclined. But the jaws now have some degree of movement, some freedom of movement. And what happens is that when you clamp something in it that is not perfectly parallel, okay, what is going to happen is that the jaws are going to adjust to whatever they're looking at, right? So they can clamp, I think it's plus minus 4 degrees or 5 degrees, something like that. They can clamp whatever is in there. So for tapered stocks, this I think can work really, really well. Neither the other gun pods nor the Vice from Really Right Stuff can do that. The Reaper grip it can. So the this one is different. The way the Vice and the Field Optics Research gun pod work, the rifle is always centered, and the jaws, both jaws on the left and right, move in and clamp it. Okay. The Reaper grip, and I think the Hog saddle works the same way. I'm not sure about the Triclops. Is what's called an L bracket, right? So there's an L-shaped piece of metal here, in this case rubberized on one side. Then there is another small L-shaped thing that moves in and out. So depending on how wide the forend is, you may or may not be aligned with the vertical axis through the collimator. But one of the jaws does rotate, so this will quite comfortably accommodate a tapered stock of some sort. And the jaws do taper inwards as well, so they will clamp down on a tubular stock or something that's not square, and hold it down so it holds a little bit better. Okay. The flex light, the jaws are parallel to each other, but if you look carefully at these are these rubber inserts here, right? If you look carefully at the rubber inserts, they're thicker up top and the bottom, so they create the same basic effect of jaws sloping in a little bit. That having been said, when I tried these three with a fairly heavy gun that had a tubular stock, that I have a fairly heavy AR that does this, what's in the AR-10 in this case, the RRS held it a little bit more securely than the flex light, but ultimately they all work. There was a little bit of breathing in the way the rifle was moving with this guy. With this one, it was a locked solid. Reaper grip was pretty decent as well. What helped the RR Really Right Stuff thing in this case is the fact that the Reaper grip has this curvature, Really Right Stuff is just sloped, and somehow this seemed to hold it really nicely. But once again, I did not really have major issues with any of them. Okay. What else? As far as shooting control goes, I can't really complain about any of them when using a gun with comparatively little recoil. And I tried things like I tried a 22, I tried a couple of regular ARs, I tried my 308 fix, and then I have a hunting rifle in 300 WSM that is comparatively lightweight, and then I tried it with that. And as you go up in recoil, what changes a little bit is how you recover from recoil. There are a couple of things in play here. One is how far above the top of the tripod legs you are, right? The further up you are, the more of a lever you have. And that is one of the things where the field optics research stuff does really well. Let me see if I can line this up so you guys can see. Like this, right? So with, I'm going to use a knife as a pointer so my hand doesn't block things. With field optics research stuff, this is where the bottom of the gun stock is. With really right stuff, this is where the bottom of the gun stock is. So this distance is a little bit larger, and because of that, there's a little bit more torque on the scope, right? But until recoil got fairly significant, I didn't really see a whole lot of difference, right? The Reaper grip with this adapter that I have is even taller. Let me see if I can position it all in front of the camera so you can see. It's not perfectly lined up, but you can see how much taller this is, right? So the where the rifle sits is here for the field optics research, here for the really right stuff Vice, and here on top of this pad here, also rubberized, for the Reaper grip. So there was more, once recoil got a little bit more significant, I could feel that the muzzle control was slightly worse with the Reaper grip. And I was coming back on target, trying to figure out where the bullet is going, a little bit slower. With the field optics research tripods, well, wasn't tripods, excuse me, gun vices, especially these two new ones. Let me see if I can position this so you can see. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna move this guy. We've looked at it and see if I can get it the same. Okay. Alright. Notice also how much lower the flex light is compared to the regular gun pod, right? With the regular gun pod, I think when they went for all the features, is this about right? Yeah, that's about right. When all the features, they could have made it lower if they didn't have this Picatinny adapter on the bottom, but I think they had some requests from the tactical police community who wanted this adapter. Personally, for me, it doesn't matter that much, because for the regular shooting that I do for guns that do have the Picatinny or Arca Swiss rail on the bottom, I don't need the gun vise at all. I basically just use the bolt top tripod with a clamp that has both Arca Swiss and Picatinny, and that's all I need. So when I just started doing this, I just had this. I used the Picatinny attachment all the time. Now it doesn't matter to me. I have other equipment. But having this lower recoil axis does technically make a difference. With the Reaper grip, in principle, you can make a lower recoil axis if you take a, let me take it, that's a different thread. If you take a regular tripod attachment plate, in this case it's an Arca Swiss plate, and you can attach it here on this side of the L bracket, so the tripod can hold it here, and now you're much lower, but now you're offset. And I tried that, and I had basically the same result, more or less. With a lighter recoiling gun, it worked very nicely for me. I didn't really have any issues. But with the gun that had a little bit more kick, my recoil control and recovery from recoil seemed a little bit slow. I didn't time it, but they felt like they were a little bit slower. Okay. So that's probably the biggest difference here. Do keep in mind that the prices are also substantially different: 300, 210, 160, right? So it's kind of one of those things. What do you want to pay for? Really, I'll spend some more time with them in an effort to answer that question. If you were to ask me now if of these gun vices that I tried, so from 3 different companies, if I had to choose one now, I would probably go for the Field Optics Research flex light, basically because for me the gun vise is most useful when I have a rifle that does not have Picatinny or Arca Swiss attachments on the bottom. So this Picatinny attachment that the conventional gun pot has doesn't have that much value for me anymore, but I do want to adapt to differently shaped stocks. For example, my rimfire rifle that I shoot off of tripod with quite a bit has a plastic slightly tapering stock, and the flex light worked with it like a charm, while the RRS, as perfectly executed as it is, because the jaws are parallel, did not quite clamp it as well. Reaper grip did. No problems there. But Reaper grip is the one that gave me the most problem when I was shooting with my 300 WSM hunting rifle, which also happens to have a tapered stock. Both of these clamps were able to accommodate the tapered stocks with equal ease, but recoil control for me and a recovery back to the shot was better with the flex light. And I think that's pretty much what makes the most difference to me at this stage. I'm very impressed with how many different features the Field Optics Research guys were able to put into a gun pod, and made it lighter than the original version and all that. But the truth is that outside of law enforcement circles, so many people these days just don't really use quad rails or stuff with Picatinny rails on the sides all that much anymore. And I'm one of them, right? I don't know how much value these features have for me. They might for you. Okay. So that's largely that. If you guys have questions and you know where to find me, I am gonna set these up on tripods and take some pictures with guns on them. Next time I take them out to the range and do a little bit of shooting with them and see how it all goes. But it's entirely possible that as I shoot more, my impressions are going to change to some degree. But as it is right now, these are all functional, they all work fine. They all have sort of their strengths and weaknesses. But for field use, we have to drag this thing out with you. I think the flex light does pretty much everything that I needed to do at the lightest weight and at sort of a mid-pack price. I mean, these two ultimately probably offer you more unless you have a tapered stock, but they also cost more, right? And between the Reaper grip at $460 or the flex light for $200, I'd probably go for the lighter flex light more often than not. But we'll see. I have to return stuff, I think, in about 3 weeks. So I have at least a couple of different shooting range outings with these, and I'll try them with different guns and try to get a better idea of how fast my recovery is and whether there is any real issue in terms of where the recoil moves me. With the Reaper grip, when the attachment point was on this side, I did get an impression that the recoil is moving me sideways more than it normally does, but it was only really noticeable on a fairly lightweight 300 Magnum. Once again, if any of this brings up questions, or if you guys know anybody at Hawk Saddle or Triclops who can loan me a gun vise to play with, I would appreciate it. Otherwise, I don't like chasing after companies, and I've reached out and they ignored me, and it's perfectly fine, but I'm not gonna really try to chase after them again. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please put in your comments below the video. Let me know if there is anything significant you think I missed. And thank you for watching, and thank you for listening. I really appreciate your time and that you're spending it with me.